Hello everyone, this is King Rawl, and today I'll be showing you how to 3D print your armor. This is a preparation video to get you ready for scale, solidify, separate, arranging, and saving your files for your 3D printer. Alright, first you must understand your build platform. I'm using a RepRap Pro Mendel. My build platform has dimensions of 200 millimeters in the X, 200 millimeters on the Y, and 100 millimeters on the Z. Now Blender by default is in metric, so I can see that the file I've already scaled is set to 120 millimeters across in the X-axis, 241 in the Y-axis, and 137 on the Z-axis. Now the X is fine. The Y and Z are larger than my build platform, and I've got these two extra pieces floating up top that I'm gonna want touching the build platform. So first off, after I scale, I'm gonna need to add a modifier and solidify. Now you can scroll your solidify either out or in. Understand that you don't want to go too far in. It'll be thicker and more support, but it's going to take a longer time to print. Plus you're going to be losing your scale for the inside of your foot. It's probably not going to fit in that after you've already scaled it. So we'll go ahead and lower this down and put it as a 0.05 scale for my solidify. Okay, so now we want to separate this into printable files. In order to do that, I'm going to need to highlight everything that I want to get rid of, delete those, and delete that. Don't worry, I can come back later and undelete. So those pieces are not completely lost. If I mess up completely, I can start over with the original file again. And now I'm ready to export this one piece as a printable file. Now it is under 200, under 200, and under 100, so that's going to be fitting on my build platform. You're going to want to export this in STL so that your 3D printer recognizes it as a printable file. So let's go ahead and name this foot front. You can name it toe, you can name it whatever you want. Just make sure that it is going to be a separate file than any other piece of what you're going to be printing. Now I want to keep my scaled it first, that way whenever I go through I can have the same scale for my other pieces. Now I do not want a larger toe than the heel. I do not want a larger heel than the toe. My solidify is still there. It's set up for the same thickness on both. So now I've only got this heel, file, export, STL, foot, back. Now I do not need to arrange this piece so that it's right in the center where the grid's at. It's actually in your Slicing program's automatically going to center this where it needs to be. Now I can invert and get rid of these two pieces. Alright, now these two up here I can print together since they're small enough. My dimensions of these items are well within the 200, 200, 100 limits, but as you can see, they're crooked. I'm going to need to have a solid, flat build surface, that way it adheres to my table. Now, in order to accomplish this, I'm going to have to rotate both of these pieces so that a smooth surface is touching the bottom. Now I can use this one. I will need to print it with supports in order to maintain structural integrity over on this half, or I can turn it around and print it like this, which I probably won't need a whole lot of supports over here for this piece, but I would for the center. I can also separate out this piece, that way I get three separate pieces. All I did was duplicate that, highlight that again, delete it, and now I can orient this in a way that will be on the print platform again. Now I've got a nice flat surface right there. All I have to do is just drop it down to match this other side. Now Blender has a nice little grid on the back, so you can make sure that all your pieces are nice and evenly set up. Alright. That looks good. I can go ahead and change this one around. Get it somewhat flat as I can. And now go ahead and move this into position, that way it's on the, everything is touching the table. If you have one piece higher than the other, then it's going to take this bottom right here, put that on the table, and then this is going to be your floating piece up here. So now everything looks like it's probably going to be on the build platform. Later on I will need to glue these three pieces back together in order to get my one solid object again. And you know, that was probably it's going to save me on plastic, so I didn't have to print all the support that I would have needed for that item. So make sure that I'm still within my tolerance of my print bed. Export STL. This is going to be the top of the foot. Okay, now I'm ready for printing. So I'm using Pronterface with my RepRap printer. it automatically uses Slicer as a G-code generator. Whether you have a MakerBot, a Cupcake, Mendel Max, any other variation of 3D printer, it's going to come with some sort of G-code generator and interface so that you can change all your settings, and it can read your 3D file as printing parameters. Alright, I have my layer height set to 0.28 millimeter height. That is good for some fine detail. I can set it lower to 0.25. I can set it higher to 0.4. You really don't want to set that any more than your nozzle diameter. You want to make sure that whatever's coming out is going to be touching your next layer up is going to be touching the previous layer that you just printed. Alright, whenever you get started, you need to measure your filament. I'm using a 1.75 millimeter filament, but it actually measures a little bit smaller, as about 1.7, 1.68 in some areas. For good measurement, make sure that I'm getting enough out, I've actually lowered it down to 1.65 millimeters. Your infill, you can change your fill density to whatever you need. Let's go ahead and put a 0.75. That's actually 75% infill. I'm gonna have a fill angle of 45 degrees. All that means is that whenever it's filling it in, it's going to make its fill pattern either this way or the other direction, and it's going to be a crosshatch pattern. That way, it builds it stronger that way. You change your different speeds, skirt and brim. I recommend printing at least one loop around it for a skirt. That will help make sure that you get a solid stream on your start of your print. Sometimes whenever it's been sitting there, some of your plastic might ooze out, and that's going to create a blank spot on your print, and you don't want any empty spaces. Prontraface currently supports more than one extruder for different colors, different support materials, whether you use an ABS plastic or PLA. Support material, I can have now these pieces that are hanging over more than 45 degrees, I can build a support. It'll automatically generate a support for that. Any extra notes you can put on your G-code. I like to turn off my temperature, especially if I'm going to be printing more than one. That way it doesn't have to cool down then warm back up after it's done printing. You can easily use your slicer program separate than your Prontraface. I've actually got all my settings saved. So I don't need to set anything up. I'll go ahead and let's go ahead and load the back of the foot, the heel. This is taking the settings I've already saved in my slicer. It's going to take I don't know, a couple minutes maybe to slice this, depending on the size of the file and how much detail is in it. Will change how long it's going to be taken to slice. I've had one that took about 4 hours to slice, and that was a very high detailed mesh. It actually, I kept running out of memory, and after I finally got it to where it can get it, I realized that the print time was going to be over 24 hours, so I decided not to print that. Alright, with a point layer height of 0.28, this is going to be my maximum that it's going to go up to, is 95.2, and it's going to be printing in 340 layers. Now this heel piece is going to be taking 3 hours and 28 minutes 47 seconds. And that's only an approximation. It might actually take a little bit longer than that, depending on how fast your machine is running. So I can go into my G-code viewer, and it's going to show me each layer of what the tool path is going to be taking. It's going to start out at 0, 0, 0, and it's going to move and print it at 100, 100 in the center of the build platform, since it's 200 either way. So I can zoom in, and I can see that my fill angle is going to be at 45 degrees this way. It's actually going to do that for 3 layers, because I've got my shell set to 3. So it's got 3 perimeters on the outside, and then 3 layers on the bottom, 3 layers on the top. Now whenever it starts out, it's going to print this skirt. Now that is useful because, like I said, whenever you start out, you're probably going to have some the plastic had oozed out, so it's going to be printing a blank piece up to about right here. Then it might get a little spotty, and then you'll start getting a solid line. Now if that had started up here, I wouldn't have any material in that spot, and it might mess up my print. So it's good to have at least one skirt printing it out as one solid. After you get your solid object, it's going to start your solid skirt. It's going to start printing your object, and it's not going to have that skirt anymore. So again, scroll up, and now my solidified didn't get it thick enough, so now my walls are only as thick as the nozzle itself. It's only going to make one path, one layer of the piece. So you can see that it is nice and smooth. You want to check for any drastic variation. If this line, say, were to suddenly jump on the inside, then you would have needed some support. Otherwise, it's not going to have, that's going to be printing across open space in the middle of it, and you won't have any support for that material, and that will seriously ruin your print. Now everything seems to be transitioning smoothly to the top. Now it's moving towards the center right there, and it's got a little bit of fill density, and scrolling back, and now we're at the top, and that's going to be it for that. Now say I printed the back of the foot, and then I printed the front of the foot. Now I want to print the back of the foot again. Now I don't need to run that through my slicer program again. I've already got my G-code exported, so all I have to do is just open that G-code, and it's going to go ahead and tell me that it's ready to print. It's going to load up, and I'm ready to print another one. That will do it for this video. If you have any questions, please direct them on the 405th website, not towards this video. And I hope to see more people doing this. It's a very neat tool to be having, especially if you don't have any sculpting abilities. Blender's free software. You can get that at their website, blender.org. Pronterface is also free. They do not have the current slicer already within their newest Pronterface interface, so you'll have to update that manually. There are tutorials on the internet to help you out with that. If you have a MakerBot, you probably don't need to update anything. You know, if you've got the capability of printing more than one color, I'd like to see that done with the armor files. Say that you wanted the toe to be black, the heel to be, I don't know, turquoise, or the top of the foot to be glow in the dark even. Especially this piece right here, you can have little lights put in, or change the color of these pieces, or you can even print it with glow in the dark plastic. I've printed I myself have printed with blue and the green, which is actually white, but it glows green. You know, after I update my RepRap, the RepRap Pro Mendel has the capability to print 3 colors, but I do not currently have more than one extruder or hot end for it. Hope to someday do that, and I'll be able to possibly print armor in multiple colors. And please, if you print yours out, then make a thread on the 405th showing how you did it, and you know, which armor files you went ahead and went with. You can find the Iron Man helmet on the MakerBot's website, Thingiverse. Somebody's already prepared it for you. All you have to do is just separate it, each piece, print it with a different color, or print it all with the same color and paint it later. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see a whole lot of the 3D armor printing in the future. Thank you for watching.